this is really good material for this is no different. Like, this is not unique from, and I hate politicizing everything, but this is political. And when you look at evidence that mysteriously disappears, right, or it's evidence that could be damning to all sides of a political aisle, but it's framed in a very specific light where it's only damaging to one. This is one of those instances where there's no excuse. And by the way, biggest line of bullshit ever that this happened. There's zero chance that this was accidental, that it was viewed, if you read the report, that it was viewed as an inactive device. There's no merit to any claims that were made here. But it is totally just ironic, and it's a little funny that Nick actually had a FOIA request granted for the same exact period, not the same stop and end point, but for the same window of time, from within this window of time where text messages were deleted. And look, there's not that many that showed up as responsive records. So what's the need for the purge in the first place? It's laughable. So, you know, could you make the claim, or is it worthwhile to question this and put it in front of people that have the power of requesting and ultimately retrieving this information? If nobody buys the BS line or the story that they're selling us, that these text messages disappeared from a miraculous overlapping time period that's extremely relevant to MMTLP. And by the way, I'm not a person that subscribes to everything is MMTLP related. That we overemphasize the importance specifically back to MMTLP all too often. But this specific window of time from October 18th of 2022 back to September 6th of 2023 is a very specific window of time, because it is the last amendment of NextBridge hydrocarbon spin out, right, of MMTLP ultimately spinning out and immediately preceding the approval. So that's the last amendment. So you know it's going live because they can't suspend it anymore with any bogus correspondence. And obviously it covers the halt period, preceding the halt, you know, during the halt, after the halt. And then it goes all the way through the period where there's all this activity, all the uproar, the FAQs, the responses to the FAQs. And then ultimately the Senate Banking Committee meeting the week prior, where we know, thanks to our awesome Idaho investors that really worked to build relationships with Mike Crapo's office, we know that they already issued the questions to Gary Gensler, that he was provided those well in advance of. Now, it was just an inquiry. It wasn't the line of questioning that Mike Crapo was kind of shooting from the hip after Gary Gensler sidestepped the questions. But that was the communications that are deleted are immediately prior, the week prior to that Senate Banking Committee. So if you put yourself in his shoes, right, and what was taking place likely in that time period where you're trying to get your story straight, we know in the communications that obviously the SEC had an emergency meeting with FINRA during the halt, right? That was called the Sunday night before, you know, the Monday, December 12th. And we know that they also colluded on the FAQ response. So, you know, what was in text messages? What would you assume, if you're sitting in Gary Gensler's position, what would you assume would be in text messages immediately prior to, the week prior to a Senate Banking Committee hearing, where you're already getting a question about something that you want to distance yourself with? And if there's any doubt with that fact, any doubt whatsoever, he doesn't even answer the question asked of him. If you go back and watch it again, he distances himself which is not really related to the question.
Trading halt. They didn't seek the SEC's advice or permission on that. That is something that they did separately in that matter.
So is the SEC not investigating these actions at all?
The SEC's role is to investigate many things in the capital markets. We don't speak to specific investigations, but
I don't know if this question relates to you or FINRA or both, but the investors have asked for the aggregated audited share count for the MMTLP and for the blue sheet data to ascertain whether MMTLP shares were subject to counterfeit and naked short selling. Have FINRA and the SEC analyzed MMTLP for any potential fraud or wrongdoing?
We seek to analyze fraud and wrongdoing wherever it might be in our capital markets, and certainly we're well aware of these matters, but I can't speak about specific possible investigations or even confirm or deny whether we have them, because it protects the markets. That, you know, when we sometimes close an investigation and we don't find something, but certainly we could follow up staff about the specific questions about data.
All right. Am I hearing you say, though, I do believe I'm hearing you say that there could be an investigation underway, but you can't give data about it. But if there is an investigation underway into these matters, and if that investigation finds answers, is that information not going to be made available to the public?
We only make information as a result of any investigation public if we either settle or bring charges in competent courts. And that really helps protect the public and protects individuals when we don't bring charges.
Well, then how are investors and, frankly, Congress to know whether you have even undertaken such an investigation or whether such an investigation has resulted in any outcome?
Again, part of, I think, the trust in our capital markets is being a cop on the beat, but also when we close investigations that do not result in either litigation or a settlement, that's really between those various registrants or market participants that it's been closed, and they have a right to say if it's been closed or not.
He distances himself and the SEC from the decision of the halt, the U3 halt of MMTLP, and he points at FINRA. So anyway, I point all that back to, all of a sudden now, more than a year later from these text messages and the device being wiped, a year later is when we're hearing about it. And we're supposed to buy that as something other than a line of bullshit. I don't think so.